What if the most stubborn fat on your body, the kind that refuses to budge no matter how disciplined you've been with your meals or how consistent you've been at the gym, isn't actually about willpower at all? What if it comes down to one seemingly insignificant moment each evening, a moment that passes by completely unnoticed, yet holds the power to determine whether your body spends the night burning fat or quietly protecting it? We've been conditioned to believe that fat loss follows a simple mathematical formula. Consume fewer calories than you burn, maintain a caloric deficit, and the weight will come off. It sounds logical, almost foolproof. But if this equation were truly the complete answer, if it were really that straightforward, then why do so many people who follow this advice religiously still find themselves stuck, frustrated, staring at a midsection that simply won't respond? The reality is far more nuanced than we've been led to believe. Your body is not a simple calculator that tallies calories in versus calories out. It's an extraordinarily complex biological organism, a living system that operates according to ancient rhythms, hormonal signals, and metabolic windows that open and close based on timing, not just quantity. And this is precisely where our exploration begins today. When stating exactly what happens to your belly fat when you stop eating at 6 in the evening. More importantly, we'll explore why belly fat becomes uniquely stubborn during the nighttime hours. What's actually occurring at a hormonal and cellular level when you continue eating late into the evening. And why something as simple as adjusting when you have your last meal can fundamentally shift your body from a fat storage state into a fat burning state, without requiring you to eat less or exercise more. If you've ever experienced that frustrating sensation of feeling like you're doing absolutely everything right, following all the conventional advice, yet still not seeing the results you deserve, this isn't about lacking discipline or commitment. This is about a biological signal that's being systematically missed night after night. Stay with us through to the very end, because the most critical moment for fat loss doesn't actually happen during your morning workout or your afternoon meal prep. It happens when the lights finally go out, when your mind quiets down and your body is given the space it needs to do the deep metabolic work it was designed to perform. And if you appreciate content that's rooted in real science, presented in a way that's both clear and immediately actionable, make sure you subscribe right now, because what we're sharing today is just the beginning of a much deeper conversation about how your body actually works. When stating the great paradox that most people never recognize about fat loss, it almost never fails during daylight hours. Think about your typical day. During those sunlit hours, you're generally more conscious about what you're eating. You make deliberate choices. You move around more naturally. You might even fit in a structured workout. You're engaged, alert, and your metabolic machinery is running at full capacity. But then, something shifts as the day winds down. Right at the moment when you think all your hard work has been properly accounted for, when you believe you've done everything necessary to move toward your goals, nighttime quietly and decisively tips the scales. The human body doesn't actually evaluate fat loss on a meal-by-meal basis, or even workout by workout. It assesses your metabolic state based on biological rhythm, on circadian patterns that have been hardwired into your physiology over millions of years of evolution. What your body is constantly measuring is whether there exists a sufficiently long, quiet window, an uninterrupted stretch of time where it can shift gears entirely from processing incoming energy to focusing on repair, restoration, and metabolic recalibration. During the night, there exists a remarkably narrow metabolic window, a critical period where your hormones essentially cast votes on what happens next in your body. Will stored fat, particularly the dangerous visceral fat wrapped around your organs, be made available as fuel? Or will your body default to its protective mode, keeping that fat locked away as a survival reserve? When this metabolic window successfully opens, your body transitions into what can best be described as maintenance mode. Insulin levels drop significantly, growth and repair mechanisms become activated, and fat stores, especially that stubborn belly fat, become accessible as a usable energy source. But when this window fails to open, when the conditions aren't right for this transition, the exact opposite occurs. And the single most common reason this critical window stays firmly closed is deceptively simple. It's eating late into the evening. When food continues to arrive in your system during the evening hours, even if it's just light snacks, even if it's foods that are technically healthy and nutritious, your body receives an unmistakable biological signal. Energy intake has not stopped. Food is still being processed. Insulin, the hormone responsible for managing incoming nutrients, remains on active duty. And here's the crucial point that changes everything once you understand it. As long as insulin remains elevated in your bloodstream, fat burning is effectively paused. Not because your body is being resistant or stubborn, not because you're doing something wrong, but simply because of a fundamental biological principle. Your body cannot simultaneously process incoming fuel and tap into stored fuel reserves. It's not designed to multitask in this way. The metabolism doesn't run both programs at once. While insulin is actively managing the nutrients from your most recent meal or snack, the message being sent throughout your entire system is clear and unambiguous. External energy is still arriving and being dealt with. There is no need whatsoever to open up the internal reserves yet. When stating this particularly insidious, what makes it so easy to miss entirely is that the failure happens in complete silence. There's no alarm that sounds, no obvious physical warning signal that something has gone wrong metabolically. You eat your evening snack, you go to sleep feeling fine. You wake up the next morning, and everything seems perfectly normal on the surface. Yet behind the scenes, in the invisible world of hormones and metabolic processes, your body has missed its nightly opportunity to shift into proper repair mode. And that belly fat, especially the deep visceral fat that surrounds your vital organs and poses the greatest health risk, remains protected and untouched, preserved as a survival reserve that your body has decided it still needs to hold on to. This is precisely why so many people feel completely baffled by their lack of progress. They genuinely are doing everything right according to conventional wisdom. They're eating healthy foods, they're controlling portions, they're exercising regularly, yet their waistline stubbornly refuses to change. It's not a failure of effort or commitment. It's a missed biological timing signal that keeps repeating night after night. The sabotage of fat loss doesn't happen at breakfast or lunch when your body is metabolically primed to handle food. It happens in what fails to occur before your body fully enters the restorative phase of night. Once you truly grasp this concept, once this clicks into place, fat loss transforms from an endless battle of willpower and discipline into something far more elegant. It becomes a matter of restoring natural rhythm, of working with your biology instead of unknowingly fighting against it. When nighttime represents the true battleground where fat loss is won or lost, insulin functions as the central switch controlling that entire outcome. It's important to understand that insulin is not your enemy. It's not some villain hormone that's trying to make you gain weight. Insulin is simply performing the job it was designed to do over millions of years of evolution, moving energy from the food you eat into your cells, where it can be used or stored. But that essential job comes with a very clear, non-negotiable biological rule. As long as insulin remains elevated in your system, fat burning is placed on hold. There's nothing personal about this, nothing moral or judgmental. Your body isn't being stubborn. It isn't sabotaging your weight loss goals out of spite. It simply cannot process incoming energy and simultaneously tap into stored energy reserves. These are mutually exclusive metabolic states. When insulin is actively working, when it's elevated and managing nutrients, the metabolic message being broadcast throughout your entire system is crystal clear and impossible to misinterpret. External fuel is still arriving and being handled. There is absolutely no need to open up the internal fat stores yet. The problem begins when eating extends later into the evening than your body's natural rhythm expects or can easily accommodate. Even a relatively small dinner, even seemingly innocent choices like a bowl of yogurt, a handful of nuts, or foods that are labeled as healthy and nutritious, still require insulin to step in and do its job. Every single time food arrives, regardless of what type or how much, insulin's work shift gets extended, its duties are prolonged,
And when that shift runs too long, when insulin stays elevated well into the hours when it should be declining, the fat-burning switch never gets its opportunity to flip on. What makes this pattern particularly subtle and easy to miss is that you don't feel it happening in real time. There's no obvious physical sensation, no clear warning sign that something metabolically significant is going wrong. But biologically, at the cellular level, your body becomes stuck in a prolonged consumption and storage mode, instead of being able to transition into the nighttime maintenance and fat utilization mode it was designed for. Meanwhile, your entire metabolic system is fundamentally designed and optimized for the night to serve as a period of repair, regeneration, and the strategic use of stored energy, with a particular emphasis on that deep, dangerous abdominal fat. When eating earlier in the evening, when you create that crucial buffer between your last meal and sleep, an entirely different sequence of events unfolds in your body. Insulin completes its assigned task of processing the nutrients from dinner, and it's finally allowed to fall back down to baseline levels. This isn't something that requires forcing or manipulation. It's a completely natural biological signal responding to a simple reality. The flow of incoming energy has paused. That drop in insulin, that return to baseline, is precisely what allows your body to shift gears smoothly from intake mode to maintenance mode. In that lower insulin state, your body doesn't panic about the absence of food. It doesn't feel deprived or threatened. It feels safe and secure enough to access stored fuel reserves. And fat, particularly that visceral fat deep in your abdomen, becomes a logical and preferred energy source. Not because you've eaten drastically less food, not because you've created some extreme caloric deficit, but simply because the hormonal timing is finally correct. The metabolic conditions are aligned. The key insight that changes everything once you internalize it is this: fat loss doesn't happen by constantly stimulating insulin throughout the day and into the night. It happens by allowing insulin to step aside at the appropriate moment, to complete its job, and then get out of the way. Ending dinner earlier isn't about skipping meals or depriving yourself. It's about creating the quiet metabolic window that your biology absolutely needs to activate processes it was specifically designed to perform, processes that can only happen when insulin is low.
When insulin has been given the opportunity to step back after an earlier dinner, once it's been allowed to return to baseline, another key player quietly enters the nighttime stage. This particular hormone has nothing whatsoever to do with willpower or food choices, but it has everything to do with light, darkness, and the ancient biological clock that humans evolved with over hundreds of thousands of years. That player is melatonin. Most people know melatonin exclusively as the sleep hormone, the chemical that makes you feel drowsy. But metabolically, its role extends far beyond simply making you sleepy. Melatonin signals to your entire body, to every cell and system, that the day has officially ended and it's time to shift into repair mode, maintenance mode, and energy conservation mode. As melatonin levels rise in your bloodstream, your nervous system naturally slows down, your body temperature gently drops, and a whole cascade of restorative processes begins to activate throughout your system. When the significant problem arises when melatonin and insulin are elevated simultaneously, when both hormones are high in your system at the same time. From an evolutionary perspective, this is a combination that the human body was simply never designed to handle. For the vast majority of human history, spanning hundreds of thousands of years, eating occurred almost exclusively during daylight hours, when the sun was up. Nighttime was reserved for rest, for sleep, for the body to do its maintenance work. As a direct result of this evolutionary pattern, when melatonin begins to rise as darkness falls, insulin sensitivity naturally and automatically declines throughout your body. Your cells become less responsive to insulin signals. The body is essentially communicating that it no longer wants incoming fuel at this time. It wants to shut down the intake processes and focus entirely on repair and restoration. When food arrives during this melatonin-dominant window, when you eat late in the evening,
Insulin is forced to operate directly against your body's natural circadian rhythm. Blood sugar gets cleared more slowly from your bloodstream because cells are less responsive. Glucose lingers longer in circulation than it normally would, and low-grade inflammation subtly increases throughout your system. Not enough to cause immediate, obvious harm, not enough for you to feel sick, but enough to fundamentally change how that energy gets stored. In this misaligned state, when insulin and melatonin are competing, excess energy gets preferentially routed to the safest, most protected storage site your body has: deep abdominal visceral fat.
When eating ends earlier, when you respect that buffer between dinner and sleep, the entire hormonal landscape of your night changes dramatically. By the time melatonin naturally begins to rise as darkness falls, insulin has already completed its work and fallen back to baseline. The signals no longer overlap or compete with each other. Instead, your body receives a clear, unified, unambiguous message: it is time to rest. In this synchronized state, when your hormones are aligned rather than in conflict, metabolism becomes remarkably smoother. Inflammation is naturally restrained, and stored energy, including that stubborn belly fat, can be accessed in an orderly, efficient way. The difference isn't about how much or how little you've eaten. It's that your hormones are no longer fighting each other, no longer sending contradictory signals. When melatonin is allowed to perform its job properly in a low insulin environment, nighttime stops working against your fat loss efforts and starts working quietly, powerfully in your favor.
When these two hormones finally stop competing, once melatonin and insulin are no longer singing over each other and sending mixed signals, your body becomes fully prepared to enter an even deeper phase of overnight fat burning. This is a metabolic state that only opens when biological timing is respected, when the conditions are exactly right. When melatonin and insulin finally stop their conflict, the body enters a state that few people in modern society ever allow themselves to reach: true metabolic quiet. This isn't a state where your body shuts down or becomes inactive, quite the opposite. This is when your body begins working silently but decisively, performing some of its most important metabolic work. Between roughly 2 in the morning and the hours just before sunrise, if insulin has remained low for long enough, a unique biological door swings open. Imagine your body as a bustling city at night. During daylight hours, all the energy shops stay open, traffic keeps flowing constantly, transactions happen continuously. But at this deep hour of the night, the lights gradually dim, movement slows dramatically, and the internal power plant finally comes online to run the entire city. This is what we call the overnight fat-burning window. In this remarkable state, your body no longer reaches for quick, easily accessible fuel like glucose or recently consumed carbohydrates. Instead, it turns inward and begins to unlock its deepest, most protected reserve: visceral fat. This fat is metabolically dangerous specifically because of where it's stored, wrapped around vital organs. But it's also highly metabolically active, which means when conditions are right, when the hormonal signals align properly, your body is actually quite eager to use it as fuel. The liver becomes the central energy dispatcher during this window. It takes fatty acids that have been released from visceral fat stores and converts them into something called ketone bodies, a remarkably clean and stable fuel source. Ketones don't just power your muscles during sleep. They cross the blood-brain barrier and supply steady, efficient energy to your brain, your heart, and your lungs throughout the entire night. While you're sleeping peacefully, completely unaware, your body is literally running on fuel that was stored months or even years ago. What's truly remarkable about this process is how quiet and effortless it feels. You don't experience heat. You don't feel hunger pangs. There's no sensation of strain or effort. Yet biologically, this represents one of the most efficient and powerful phases for redistributing stored energy and specifically reducing dangerous belly fat. There's no incoming food to process, no blood sugar management required, no competing metabolic signals. Your body can focus singularly on one elegant task: sustaining life using fuel it stored away precisely for this purpose. When this window is so fragile,
so dependent on the right conditions, one late-night snack can shut it down completely and immediately. A small dessert after dinner, a glass of milk before bed, even something specifically consumed to help you sleep better, they all send exactly the same metabolic message. External energy has arrived. Insulin must rise to handle it. Ketone production stops immediately, and that precious metabolic door quietly closes until the next night, assuming you create the right conditions then. This is precisely why so many people, despite their best efforts, never actually reach this deep fat-burning state. Not from any lack of effort or dedication, not from insufficient exercise or poor food choices, but simply because the body is never given enough uninterrupted quiet time. Eating earlier doesn't somehow force fat loss to happen through deprivation. It simply removes the obstacles, the metabolic roadblocks that prevent your biology from doing exactly what it was designed to do over millions of years of evolution. When this window opens consistently, night after night, belly fat stops being an impenetrable fortress. It becomes what it should be: organized, accessible fuel that gets used systematically, night after night.
When the overnight fat-burning furnace stays lit and ketones quietly fuel your brain and vital organs, another hormone steps onto the stage as the behind-the-scenes director of the entire night shift operation. Human growth hormone, commonly known as HGH. This isn't some hormone reserved exclusively for elite athletes or young people. It's a fundamental biological preservation signal that your body relies on whenever insulin remains low for a sufficient period of time. Think of HGH as the city's night watchman making his rounds. Once the streets are quiet and empty, once the daytime activity has ceased, the watchman systematically checks every district. Repair whatever has been damaged during the day, protect whatever is valuable and essential, and critically, decide which reserves can safely be used for fuel without compromising the city's infrastructure. In a low-insulin environment, HGH delivers a clear, unambiguous command to your entire system. Do not break down muscle tissue. Do not cannibalize living, functional tissue. Use stored fat instead. This is where many people fundamentally misunderstand what's happening during overnight fat loss. They wake up feeling tighter around the waist, their clothes fit better, they feel leaner, and they assume it's just temporary water loss. But water loss is fleeting, it comes back quickly. What's actually happening is much deeper and more significant. It's genuine metabolic remodeling.
Throughout the night, in that quiet window, when conditions are right, HGH actively promotes tissue repair. Muscle fibers are reinforced and strengthened. Bone undergoes micro-renewal at the cellular level. Skin structure is supported and maintained. At the exact same time, HGH is directing energy flow towards fat stores, especially visceral fat, to meet your body's baseline energy demands throughout the night. In other words, HGH doesn't make you smaller or weaker. It helps you preserve exactly what matters, what's functional and essential, while systematically spending what's excess and unnecessary. The absolute key requirement for HGH to work properly and deliver these benefits is low insulin. If insulin remains elevated throughout the night due to late eating, HGH's signal becomes blurred and weakened. The message gets mixed. In that state, the body defaults to protecting fat rather than using it because the metabolic signals are confused. But when earlier eating creates enough genuine metabolic quiet, when insulin drops and stays low, HGH takes full control of the night shift. Fat loss no longer competes with muscle preservation. These two goals, which seem contradictory, actually work together harmoniously. This is why mornings after a properly aligned night feel distinctly different. You don't wake up feeling depleted, frantic, or weak. Instead, you feel compact, steady, grounded, and clear-minded. Your body has spent the entire night optimizing resources, trimming excess fat, and reinforcing essential structure. No drama, no force, no struggle. Just biology operating exactly as it was designed to operate. And when this rhythm repeats consistently over time, HGH stops being merely a nightly visitor.
When steady, controlled insulin fitness becomes a powerful long-term ally, helping your body systematically reduce fat while simultaneously maintaining strength, structural integrity, and a deeply grounded sense of internal stability. After a night where insulin dropped at the right time, where melatonin flowed uninterrupted without competing signals, and where HGH carried out its complete night shift duties, your body enters the morning in a profoundly different state, not with dramatic fanfare or obvious triumph, but with quiet internal order, as if every system was gently reorganized and optimized while you slept peacefully. The first sign of this alignment often appears the moment you wake up. Morning hunger feels stable and manageable. There's no frantic, desperate urge to eat immediately upon waking. No shaky urgency or irritability. This isn't the result of stronger willpower or better discipline. It's ghrelin, your hunger hormone, following its natural rhythm properly. When your body has learned through consistent experience that food reliably stops at night, and that fat supplies ample energy for many hours, your brain doesn't trigger emergency hunger signals first thing in the morning. It trusts that fuel is readily available, and there's no metabolic emergency. At the exact same time, insulin sensitivity reaches its daily peak in the morning hours. After spending hours in a low insulin state overnight, your cells are maximally receptive again. When breakfast arrives, glucose is handled smoothly and efficiently, without sharp spikes that lead to crashes later. Energy feels steady and sustained, rather than jolting and unstable. Breakfast becomes a gentle, natural continuation of overnight metabolism, not a metabolic shock to the system.
But perhaps the most profound benefit lies even deeper, in something harder to quantify but immediately noticeable: a genuine sense of internal control. When your biology is properly aligned, when hormones are working together rather than in conflict, discipline no longer has to constantly fight against impulse. Food choices throughout the day feel simpler, quieter, more intuitive and natural. You're not constantly negotiating with cravings or using willpower to overpower urges. Your body isn't pulling you in conflicting directions, sending mixed signals about what it needs, because its actual needs were properly met during the night. This explains something that many people notice but can't quite explain. On days following earlier dinners and quality sleep, mornings just feel fundamentally easier. There's less dependence on caffeine to function. Fewer random snack cravings pop up. Energy remains more consistent throughout the morning hours. It's not magic or coincidence. It's the direct result of an uninterrupted night of proper fuel utilization and cellular repair. And this is the critical piece that most fat loss plans completely miss. Morning behavior, morning hunger, morning energy levels, they're all reflecting what happened the night before. It's not that you suddenly lack discipline today. It's that your body didn't get the chance to finish its essential metabolic work last night. When the night is respected and protected, when you create those conditions for proper overnight metabolism, morning becomes an earned reward. Calm, clear, and self-directed, without any force or struggle required. That feeling of ease and control is what makes sustainable change possible.
When stating numbers, timings, reps, calories, minutes, heart rate zones, or scientific facts, emphasize them with measured enthusiasm and confidence.
When starting isn't to cut off eating abruptly at some arbitrary time. It's to shift gradually, allowing your body to adapt naturally. If you're currently used to having dinner at 9 in the evening, try moving it to 8:30 for a few nights, then shift to 8 o'clock. Move in comfortable 30-minute increments. The body adapts far better to gradual rhythm changes than to sudden shocks. Once the new rhythm settles in and becomes familiar, the initial discomfort, the adjustment period, often fades entirely on its own. Another significantly underestimated factor that powerfully supports this transition is managing evening light exposure. Bright light, especially the blue light emitted by screens, tells your brain very clearly that the day isn't over yet, that it's still daytime. This artificially suppresses melatonin production and indirectly increases appetite and cravings. Simply dimming lights after dinner, switching to warmer bulbs in the evening, and reducing screen time earlier are remarkably simple changes that strongly support your body's natural transition into night mode. These environmental cues matter more than most people realize.
When stating the evening urge appears, if you feel pulled toward the kitchen, it's genuinely important to recognize that this is very often psychological habit rather than true biological hunger. Your body doesn't actually need more fuel. A cup of caffeine-free herbal tea, a glass of warm water, or even brushing your teeth early in the evening can be enough to signal clearly to your brain that eating is done for the day. You don't need to fight cravings with willpower. You just need to avoid automatically turning them into another eating episode. The core principle underlying all of this is elegantly simple. Don't try to force your body to burn fat through deprivation or extreme measures. Force creates stress, and stress closes the very biological doors you're trying to open. Instead, simply remove what's blocking the natural process. Late eating, excessive artificial light, constant stimulation. Once those obstacles are systematically removed, biology handles the rest automatically. And because this entire approach doesn't rely on daily willpower or constant motivation, it becomes genuinely sustainable over the long term. You don't need to summon fresh motivation every single day. You simply design an environment and routine that naturally supports your biological rhythm.
When stating one key insight, one central message to carry forward from this entire exploration, it's this: belly fat loss is not a battle against yourself, not a test of willpower or discipline. It's a process of realigning with the biological rhythm your body has carried for hundreds of thousands of years. You don't need to eat less until you're exhausted and depleted. You don't need to train harder until you're stressed and burned out. You simply need to stop interrupting the night, the time your body was specifically designed to repair, remodel, and use excess stored energy. When dinner ends earlier and that buffer is protected, insulin naturally steps aside. Melatonin leads rest and recovery without interference. HGH protects muscle while directing fat stores towards fuel. And morning arrives, not as a struggle requiring heroic effort, but with an authentic sense of calm, clarity, and control. This isn't a miracle or some secret hack. It's simply biology working exactly as it was designed to work. If this video helped you see fat loss from an entirely new perspective, one that's more scientific, more humane, and more realistic than conventional advice, please give it a like to support content that's grounded in real human physiology rather than marketing hype. And if you want to continue exploring how small but strategic shifts in daily rhythm can lead to powerful changes in metabolism, brain function, and long-term health, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't need to force your body to change through willpower alone. You just need to give it enough quiet, enough space, enough respect for its natural timing to do what it already knows how to do.